So for the first correction video, I'm going to cover question 3 and question 3b, which is this one with the alternate series. So let's just go through what I did wrong first and what went wrong with this question. You can see the star over here. This means that I kind of skipped the question. I was struggling with how to solve the question, so I skipped it, and then at the end of the test, I went back to do all the questions I didn't really know how to do, and this was one of them. And by the end, I didn't have much time, so I knew all the concepts and I knew how to do everything, but it would take like a minute or two to like have it register in my brain. And so I guess I knew it, but I wasn't super confident in it, and I should have done more practice questions. Another thing was that I forgot that I had to memorize the results of the test, right? So I knew the gist of it. I'd done practice questions, but every time I would I memorized the method of how to do the test, but then when it came to the results of the test and the conclusions of the test, I'd go back to my notes. I'd be, oh, okay, so I got L equals 1 is this thing. So that's what happened here. I didn't really memorize that, and I didn't actively memorize that. So I forgot, and that's what went wrong. So how do you do this question correctly? Okay, so let's actually do this question, and it's a lot more simpler than whatever I did. I did the alternate series test because I saw this, but in truth, the first test should always be the divergence test. So let's just write down divergence test. And so the divergence test basically goes limit to infinity, and let's just write the series here. Okay, and so if your limit to infinity becomes 0, that means it is inconclusive. And if your limit to infinity is not 0, that means it diverges. Okay, so let's do the limit right now. Firstly, we can remove this alternate series, this -1, because it won't affect our limit. It just changes the sign. It doesn't affect the number. So we can ignore that. Okay. Next thing is we have 6n over 7n plus 4. And when you do limits to infinity, you can do L'Hopital's rule, where you differentiate, essentially. So let's differentiate. The 4 becomes 0, the 7n becomes 7, and the 6n becomes 6. So we're left over with 6 over 7, which is our answer. And so you can see that it is not 0. 6 over 7 is not 0. And that means this, by, and our official answer is by the divergence test, this series does not converge. And because it's not a geometric series, we can't find out, oh yeah, well, it doesn't converge. And so, what did I do wrong? Okay, let me just add this picture back. What did I do wrong? You see, I actually did this in the test, But as I said, I didn't memorize the conclusions. So I saw this, I said, oh, it's not 0. Okay, it must mean it diverges. But that's wrong. It should be inconclusive. And then I would need to do another test. But I forgot about that. I pushed on ahead, and I said, oh, it diverges. Which is the right answer, but it's not from this test. You have to use the divergence test instead. So, welcome to my second correction question. And so the parts I made a box with in red is the parts I'm focusing on. I got part 1 correct, but I completely missed part 2, lost all 5 marks of it, and it's basically a shell method question. And so let's just first cover what went wrong. And to do that, we need to cover what went right. So I knew I had to make a slice parallel to the axis of revolution, since it was a shell method question. And you can see that I made the slice here. And then I knew the volume of the slice formula, which was basically, it's a cylinder, you cut it open, you get like a 3D rectangle, right? That's length times width times height. But I knew the height. I knew the width. All right, I knew the width, and that was change. But I got this one. I put change in y. It should have been change in x. Okay, and the length I knew was 2 pi r, but we had to find r, and I got r wrong, and I did not know what h was. So with this question, basically what happened was that I had been pretty confident in disc, washer, and shell methods, but that wasn't good, because I was good at disc and washer method. I was not good at shell, and I had focused more on some other concepts that I was weaker at. And since I had been able to do it easily throughout the couple weeks before the test, I just didn't study it much. And so I thought, oh, I just have to memorize how to make the slice, how to do the diagram. I should be able to figure the rest out. And I was not able to figure the rest out, because in the moment during the test I froze. I was like, oh no, I don't know how to do this. So yeah, I think what I can do next time is to really go through each concept and give at least like 3 questions of practice to each concept. Because yeah, for pressure, hydrostatic force, I put like 3 questions of practice into that. For harder concepts, I practiced enough. But then for this concept, I only practiced like 1 question, and it was one of the easier questions. I should have done some harder questions. I should have done some, different questions to really get used to it, instead of just memorizing the steps. And so let's get into how we can solve this question. And to do that, I think I'm going to just erase this. All right. So let's just first draw the diagram, right? Okay. This is the graph. And so 8x e to the power minus x, it goes something like this. I already knew this beforehand. And x equals 2, right? Over 0 to 2. And then you have x equals 3. Oh, that's a bit close. All right, let me just put it here. And then it keeps going. And so the first mistake I made was actually putting the cylinder here. And we're trying to find over 0 to 2. So it would have been easier to figure out the radius if I just put the cylinder on the side where the side where my interval is, right? Okay, so that's the first thing. And so with our slice, we cut this open and we get a 3D rectangle. Okay, and so the volume of the slice is length times height times width. Now we know that width is change in x, right? Because yeah, just memorize that. It's always change in x. The height, which I forgot how to do, is just the function. And why is that? Because what is a function in the end? Okay, let's say we put an x value into it. We put x equals 1. We put it into the function, out comes out the y value, right? So the height is just the y value. And the line is our function. So anywhere we put our x value, the output will be of the function because it hits the line. That's the function. So h, height, is our function. And that is that is 8x e to the power of minus x. So yeah, I completely forgot about that during the test. Next part is our length. So length is the circumference of the cylinder. So let's say you cut open a cylinder, right? You cut it open, it becomes a 3D rectangle. And let me just, all right. So this is the length, this bottom part. So how's that the circumference? Well, you can see at the bottom, this was a circle. When it's cut open, it becomes a straight line. But what is this? What is the length of this bottom area? It's 2 pi r, it's the circumference. So we know this will be 2 pi r too. And I knew that in the test, but the hard part was figuring what r is. And so the method I used to solve this after the test was a little bit of just trial and error. Let me just fix all this. So first, we need to determine how we're going to find the radius. And the radius is determined as the distance from the center, right? So this is our radius. Okay, radius. So if we want to find the distance from the center, okay, it's gotta be 3 minus something. Let me just write down here. 3 minus something. Okay, and why is that? Because minus means we're gonna find something to the left of the center, and that is where our slice is, right? We go this way, okay? Plus is this way, and we shouldn't have put the slice here. That was wrong. And so let's say we put our slice at 0. Let's just say there's like a invisible slice, all right? And we put it at 0. Then what is the distance from the center? The distance is 3. Now, so if we put our slice at 0, we gotta get 3. And so 3 minus what gets you 3? 0. And what is Okay, let's say now we put the slice at 1.5. Let's say this is 1.5. All right. And so what is the distance from our center? It's 1.5. So the radius is 1.5. 3 minus what gets us 1.5? 1.5. And now we're starting to see a pattern where, let's say, slice at 0, we put in 0. Slice at 1.5, we put in 1.5. So we instantly know that it's 3 minus x. And so with all this, now we have one slice. So to find the volume of a 3D object, we need infinite slices. To get infinite slices, we need an interval, an integral. So the integral goes from 2 to 0 because it says over 0 to 2, right? So 2 at the top, 0 at the bottom, 0 to 2. And then it's, as we said, length times height times width. So we'll put that in 2 pi, 3 minus x, times the function. And then the change in x, when it's put into an integral, it becomes dx. Okay. So now we can put this into our calculator and solve it instantly. What that gets us, give me a second. Sorry. 2 pi 3 minus x times 8 x e power minus x dx gets us this has to be an approximation. 57.0681756. And if you recall, it says round to the nearest 0.01. So that gives us 57.07. And we have to put our unit cubed because it's a volume. And this is our final answer, 57.07. So that's how you do this question.